I'd like to read fiction today. And I'm going to start with a story that I wrote because I needed money. And this was during a time, it was very hard for me to find time to write when I was teaching high school students, or when I was a college recruiter, or when the grant money ran out. And there were many times in my life when there was no grant. So my brother and his wife would say, well, you can live with us for a little while. And that was a kindness that I can't forget. So I wrote this when I was living with my brother outside of Chicago, and he was paying for all of my needs during that year or the 6 months. Sometimes it was 6 months, sometimes it would be a year. And during that time, I found out from a children's press in Boston that they would pay me if I would write a story for children. I'd written House on Mongo Street, but I didn't write that for children. Children liked it, but it wasn't for children, and I was glad that they enjoyed it. So I sat down to write a story for children, and I needed the money. I sent it off, and I immediately received a reply that rejected the story, saying it was not for children. And that was too bad, because I really was broke. But as it turns out, it's the story that people request the most and the ones that children understand the most. And one of the reasons why it was rejected was the editor told me it was not for children. And it's funny that the kids always ask for me to read this story. 11. What they don't understand about birthdays, and what they never tell you, is that when you're 11, you're also 10 and 9 and 8 and 7 and 6 and 5 and 4 and 3 and 2 and 1. And when you wake up on your 11th birthday, you expect to feel 11, but you don't. You open your eyes and everything's just like yesterday, only it's today. And you don't feel 11 at all. You feel like you're still 10, and you are, underneath the year that makes you 11. Like some days, you might say something stupid, and that's the part of you that's still 10. Or maybe some days you might need to sit on your mama's lap because you're scared, and that's the part of you that's 5. And maybe one day when you're all grown up, maybe you will need to cry like if you're 3. And that's okay. That's what I tell Mama when she's sad and needs to cry. Maybe she...
Okay, I want to ask you about being a loose woman.
Okay.
Now, you come from a good Catholic family, 6 brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you write poems like, I am so in love, I grow a new hymen.
But I have to explain, I didn't come from a good Catholic family. I came from a Mexican Catholic family. It's different. I have to explain, My mother didn't cross herself or have little candles lit on the dresser.
No?
No, my mom's this real free thinker, and if she had been a traditional mother, I couldn't be the writer I am today. So my mom really, she was that bridge for me. And she was a free thinker raised with a poor, humble man who was very suspicious of the Catholic Church because he'd seen the abuses of the Catholic Church before the Mexican Revolution. So my mom had a mind of her own. She didn't believe in all of that. She believed in spirituality, but she didn't believe in, the church. She'd rather give the money to this street person instead of putting it in the poor box.
And she reads your books?
She reads them, but she doesn't talk about them. She liked House on Mongo Street because she knew some of the characters, but it took her several years to finally read Woman Hollering. Not because she's not a reader, but I think she was embarrassed by the sexuality in it. Yeah. She's rather terrified of finding out her daughter has a sexuality.
I think they all are. I don't want to know about my sons. He's 4, and it's like, I know he's going to use it. I don't want to know. He should live and be well and not tell Mama.
I think that's what it is. It embarrasses her.
Yeah.
So, I finally found out that she finally finished the book, but no comment about it.
Not to you, but not...
Strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can understand it to a certain extent. I've been very, very hungry for my family's response to my work, and I miss my mother. My mother loved everything I wrote uniformly.
Wow.
She thought I should. She didn't think I told the right stories.
Wow, I wish my mother would talk to me about my stories. My mother, is proud of me and loves me, but she never talks to me about my stories.
My mother has had a magic realist mind. She would read my fiction and she would love me. She would say, "Oh, it's just wonderful. You should have told the story." And then she would tell some hilarious, funny thing that had happened. She never acknowledged that there was anything horrible or painful in what she was reading.
See, my mom doesn't do that either.
Great.
She assumes everything's true, but how come they've never asked about the rape scene in House on Manga Street? Nobody has ever asked me, "Did that happen to you?" They never
Is it
ask.
true?
They never,
Never?
it's just not there. It's like the Mexican way of dealing with things. We won't talk about it. Yeah.
It's Southern, too, and it's amazing to me. Southern Baptists and Mexicans have a lot in common.
Well, I guess I never would have guessed, but you're right. I guess so.
Oh, yes. And
See,
you
but something that you said before when we were talking in the green room, there's one difference, and this is, it struck me, that if you were Southern Baptist, you had no other option than to marry. You couldn't become a nun.
I became a lesbian.
Okay. Maybe you became a lesbian nun, though.
No, the South has a long tradition of lesbian writers. It's a recognizable category.
You know what? I want to ask you about some of those writers. Just